Hello, welcome again tonight to the reading of Harry Potter, in which we find that Harry has trapped himself in a step and in a bad way. Once again, I've got some folks alongside Jake, who's decided to color coordinate with me, his sister Spring, who is very happy to be here, but she will not speak on camera at least. As always, we're presented by our sponsor, Bertie Bott's Every Flavor Beans. Today's flavor is coffee, and I feel that segues very neatly into my own presenting sponsor, coffee. Let's jump back in. For a few seconds, Moody's lopsided gash of a mouth betrayed that he'd seen Harry there. Then he closed his mouth and turned his blue eye upon Snape again. "Did I hear that correctly, Snape?" he asked slowly. "Someone broke into your office?" "It is unimportant," said Snape coldly. "On the contrary," said Moody, "it's critical. Who'd want to break into your office?" "A student, I dare say," said Snape. Harry could see a vein flicking on Snape's greasy temple. "It has happened before. Potion ingredients gone missing from my private store. Students attempting illicit mixtures, no doubt." "Reckon they were after potion ingredients, eh?" said Moody. "You're not hiding anything else in your office." Harry saw the edge of Snape's sallow face turn a nasty brick color and the vein in his temple flick. "You know I'm hiding nothing, Moody," he said in a soft, dangerous voice. "You've searched my office pretty thoroughly yourself." Moody's face twisted into a smile. "Auror's privilege, Snape. Dumbledore told me to keep..." "Dumbledore happens to trust me," said Snape through clenched teeth. "I refuse to believe that he gave you orders to search my office." "Of course Dumbledore trusts you," said Moody. "He's a trusting man, believes in second chances. But me, I don't. I think there are spots that don't come off, Snape. Know what I mean?" Snape suddenly did something very strange. He seized his left forearm convulsively with his right hand as though something had hurt him. Moody laughed. "Go back to bed, Snape." "You don't have the authority to send me anywhere," Snape hissed. "I have as much right to prowl the school after dark as you do." "Prowl away," said Moody, but his voice was full of menace. "I look forward to meeting you in a dark corner sometime." "You've dropped something, by the way." With a stab of horror, Harry saw Moody point at the Marauder's map, still lying on the staircase 6 steps below him. As Snape and Filch both turned to look at it, Harry threw caution to the winds. He raised his arms under the cloak and waved furiously at Moody, mouthing, "It's..." Snape had reached out for it, a horrible expression of dawning comprehension on his face. "Accio parchment!" The map flew up through the air, through Snape's outstretched hand, and soared into Moody's. "My mistake," said Moody calmly. "Mine. I must have dropped it earlier." But Snape's black eyes were darting from the egg in Filch's arms, the map in Moody's hand, and Harry could tell he was putting 2 and 2 together as only Snape could. "Potter," he said quietly. "What's that?" said Moody calmly. "Potter!" Snape snarled, and he suddenly turned his head and stared right at the place where Harry was, as though he could see through him. "That egg is Potter's egg. That piece of parchment belongs to Potter. I've seen it before. I've recognized it. Potter's here. Potter's invisibility cloak. He's here." He stretched out his arm like a blind man and began to move up the stairs. Harry could have sworn his overlarge nostrils were dilating, trying to sniff him out. "There's nothing there," Snape barked Moody, "but I'll be happy to tell the headmaster how quickly your mind jumped to Harry Potter." "Meaning what?" Snape turned again to look at Moody, his hand inches from Harry's chest. "Meaning Dumbledore is very interested to know who's got it in for the boy," said Moody. "And so am I, Snape. Very interesting." The torchlight flickered across his face so that the scars looked deeper and darker than ever. Snape was looking down at Moody, and from his vantage point, Harry couldn't see the expression on Snape's face. For a moment, nobody moved or said anything. Then Snape slowly lowered his hand. "I merely thought," said Snape, in a voice of forced calm, "that if Potter was wandering around after hours again, it's a fortunate habit of his. It should be stopped. For his own safety." "I see," said Moody softly. got Potter's best interests at heart, have you? There was a pause. I think I'll go back to bed, said Snape curtly. Best idea you've had all night, said Moody. Now, Filch, if you'll give me the egg. No, said Filch, clutching the egg as though it were his firstborn. This is evidence of Peeves' treachery. It's the property of the champion he stole it from, said Moody. Hand it over now. Snape swept downstairs and past Moody without another word. Filch made a chirping noise before turning and following. Still breathing very fast, Harry heard Snape walking away from the corridor. Filch handed Moody the egg and disappeared from view too. A door slammed. Harry was left staring down at Moody, who placed his staff on the bottommost stair and started to climb laboriously toward him, a clunk on every other step. Close shave, Potter, he muttered. Yeah, thanks, said Harry. What is this thing, said Moody, drawing out the Marauder's map. It's a map of Hogwarts, said Harry, hoping Moody was going to pull him out of the staircase soon. His leg was starting to hurt him. Merlin's beard, Moody whispered, staring at the map. This is some map, Potter. Yeah, it's quite useful, said Harry. His eyes were starting to water from the pain. Professor Moody, do you think you could... Oh, yes, of course. Moody took hold of Harry's arms and pulled. Harry's leg came free of the trick step, and he climbed onto the one above it. Moody was still gazing at the map. Potter, he said slowly, you didn't happen by any chance to see you broke into Snape's office, did you? On the map, I mean. Yeah, I did, said Harry. It was Mr. Crouch. Moody's magical eye whizzed over the surface of the map. He looked suddenly alarmed. Crouch, he said. You're sure, Potter? Positive, said Harry. Well, he's not here anymore, said Moody. Crouch, that's very, very interesting. He said nothing for almost a minute, staring at the map. Harry could tell that the news meant something to Moody and wanted very much to know what it was. He wondered whether he dared ask. Moody scared him slightly, yet Moody had just helped him escape an awful lot of trouble. Professor Moody, why do you reckon Mr. Crouch wanted to look around Snape's office? Moody's magical eye left the map and looked at Harry. It was a penetrating gaze, and Harry had an impression that Moody was sizing him up. Put it this way, Potter, Moody muttered finally. They say old Mad Eye's obsessed with catching dark wizards, but I'm nothing compared to Barty Crouch. He continued to stare at the map. Harry was burning to know more. Professor Moody, he said again, do you think this could have anything to do with... Do you think Mr. Crouch knows what's going on? Like what? Said Moody sharply. Harry wondered how much he dared say. He didn't want Moody to guess he had a source of information outside Hogwarts. That might lead to tricky questions about Sirius. I don't know, Harry muttered. Odd stuff's been happening lately, hasn't it? Been on the Daily Prophet, Dark Market, the World Cup, Death Eaters. Both of Moody's mismatched eyes widened. You're a sharp boy, Potter, he said. His magical eye roved back to Marauder's map. Crouch could be thinking along those lines. Very possible. There have been some funny rumors flying around lately. I mean, half of them were made up by Rita Skeeter, but it's making a lot of people nervous. A grim smile twisted his mouth. There's one thing I hate, he muttered, more to himself. It's a Death Eater who walked free. Harry stared at him. Could Moody possibly mean what Harry thought he meant? And now I'd like to ask you a question, Potter, said Moody in a more businesslike tone. Harry's heart sank. He had thought this might be coming. Moody was going to ask where he got the map, which was a dubious magical object, and the story of how it had fallen into his hands incriminated not only him, but his father, Fred and George Weasley, Professor Lupin, and a few others. Moody waved the map in front of Harry, who braced himself. Can I borrow this? Oh. He was very fond of the map, but on the other hand, he was extremely relieved that Moody wasn't asking where he got it. And he did owe Moody a favor. Yeah, okay. Good boy, said Moody. I can make good use of this. This might be exactly what I've been looking for. Right. Bed, Potter. Come on now. They climbed to the top of the stairs together, Moody still examining the map as though it were a treasure, the likes of which he'd never seen before. They walked in silence to the door of Moody's office, where he stopped and looked up at Harry. Ever thought of a career as an Auror, Potter? No, said Harry, taken aback. You should. And incidentally, I'm guessing you weren't just taking that egg for a walk tonight. No, said Harry, grinning. I've been working out the clue. Moody winked at him, his magical eye going haywire again. Nothing like a nighttime stroll to give you ideas, Potter. We'll see you in the morning. He went back into his office and closed the door behind him. Harry walked slowly back to Gryffindor Tower, lost in thought about Snape and Crouch and what it all meant. Why was Crouch pretending to be ill if he could manage to get to Hogwarts when he wanted to? What did he think Snape was concealing in his office? And Moody thought he, Harry, ought to be an Auror. Interesting idea. But somehow, Harry thought, as he got quietly into his 4-poster bed 10 minutes later, the egg and cloak now safely stowed in his trunk, he thought he'd like to check how scarred the rest of them were before he chose it as a career. We move on to chapter 26, the second task. You said you'd already worked out the egg clue, said Hermione indignantly. Keep your voice down, said Harry crossly. I just needed to fine-tune it, all right? He, Ron, and Hermione were sitting at the very back of Charms class with a table to themselves. They were supposed to be practicing the opposite of the summoning charm today, the banishing charm. Owing to the potential for nasty accidents when objects kept flying across the room, Professor Flitwick had given each student a stack of cushions on which to practice, the theory being that they wouldn't hurt anyone if they went off target. It was a good theory, but it wasn't working very well. Neville's aim was so poor, he kept accidentally sending heavier things flying across the room, including Professor Flitwick, who had not enjoyed the ride. Forget the egg for a minute, all right? Harry hissed as Professor Flitwick went whizzing resignedly past him again, landing on top of a cabinet. I'm trying to tell you about Snape and Moody. The class was ideal for a private conversation, as everyone was having far too much fun to pay them any attention. Harry had been recounting his adventures of the previous night in whispered installments for the past half hour. Wait, Snape said Moody searched his office as well? Ron whispered. What do you think Moody's here to do? Keep an eye on Snape and Karkaroff? Oh, said Harry. I don't know if that's what Dumbledore asked him to do, but he's definitely doing it anyway, said Harry, waving his wand without paying much attention, so his cushion did a sort of belly flop off the side of the desk. Moody said Dumbledore only lets Snape stay here because he's giving him a second chance. What? Said Ron, his eyes widening, his cushion spinning high into the air, ricocheting off the chandelier and bouncing near Flitwick's desk. Harry, maybe Moody thinks Snape put your name in the Goblet of Fire. Oh, Ron, said Hermione, shaking her head skeptically. Remember the last time we thought Snape was trying to kill Harry, and instead it actually turned out he saved his life? She banished a cushion that flew across the room and landed into the box they were supposed to be aiming for. Harry looked at Hermione thinking, it was true. Snape had saved his life once. But the odd thing was that hadn't stopped him loathing him, just as he loathed Harry's father when they'd been at school together. Snape delighted in taking points from Harry, and had never missed an opportunity to give him punishments, or even to suggest that he should be suspended from school. I don't care what Moody says, Hermione went on. Dumbledore is not stupid. He was right to trust Hagrid and Lupin, even though loads of people wouldn't have given them jobs. So if he's giving Snape a second chance for something, Snape deserves it. Deserves it, said Ron. What Snape deserves is Azkaban. Come on, Hermione. If he's so noble and pure, why are all the dark wizard catchers searching his office? Well, said Hermione, I've got a better question. Why has Mr. Crouch been pretending to be ill? It's a little funny, isn't it? He can't make it for the Yule Ball, but he can get up in the middle of the night when he wants to. You just don't like Crouch because he treats his elf like crap, said Ron, sending a cushion soaring through the window far from the box. You just want to think Snape's up to something, said Hermione, dropping her cushion neatly in the box. I just want to know what Snape did with his first chance if this is his second, said Harry grimly, and his cushion, to everyone's great surprise, flew straight across the room and landed neatly on top of Hermione's. Obedient to Sirius's wish of hearing anything odd at Hogwarts, Harry sent a brown owl with a note that night explaining all about Crouch breaking into Snape's office and Moody and Snape's conversation. Then Harry turned his attention in earnest to the most urgent problem following him, how to survive underwater for an hour in a few short weeks. Ron quite liked the idea of using the summoning charm again. Harry had explained about aqualungs, and Ron couldn't see why Harry couldn't summon one from the nearest Muggle town. Hermione squashed this plan, however, by pointing out that in the unlikely event that Harry could learn how to operate an aqualung within an hour, he was sure to be disqualified for breaking the international code of wizarding secrecy. It was too much to hope that no Muggles would spot an aqualung zooming in the air across 10 miles to Hogwarts. Of course, the ideal situation, said Hermione, thinking about it for a bit, would be for you to transfigure into some sort of submarine or something. If only we'd done human transfiguration. But that doesn't start till 6th year, which is probably why all the champions are supposed to be 17 and older. Yeah, said Harry. And, Hermione continued, it can go badly wrong if you don't know what you're doing. Bingo, said Harry. I don't fancy walking around with a periscope sticking out of my head. I suppose it could always attack someone in front of Moody. He might do it for me. I don't suppose he'd let you choose what you want to be turned into, though, said Hermione seriously. No, I think your best chance is some sort of charm. So Harry, thinking he would soon have had enough of the library to last him a lifetime, buried himself once again amongst the dusty volumes, looking for any spell that might enable a human to survive without oxygen. No matter how he searched, though Harry even asked Professor McGonagall for a note of permission to use the restricted section, and even asked the irritable, vulture-like Miss Librarian Madame Pince, for help, they found nothing that could help him spend an hour underwater and live to tell the tale. Familiar flutterings of panic were starting to disturb Harry now, and he found it difficult to concentrate in class again. The lake, which Harry had always taken for granted as just another feature on the grounds, drew his eyes whenever he was near a classroom window. A great iron-gray mass of chilly water, whose dark icy depths seemed as distant as the moon. Just as it had before he faced the Horntail, time slipped away as someone bewitched the clocks to go double speed. Though it was now a week to go before February the 24th, there's still time. Now there are 5 days. He was bound to find something soon. Then there were 3 days. Please let me find something, please. And with 2 days left, Harry started to go off food again. The only good thing about Monday's breakfast was the return of the brown owl he had sent to Sirius. He pulled off the parchment, unrolled it, and saw the shortest letter Sirius had ever written to him. Send date of next Hogsmeade weekend by return owl. Harry turned the parchment over and looked at the back, hoping to see something else, but it was blank. Weekend after next, whispered Hermione, who had read the note over Harry's shoulder. Here, take my quill and send the owl back straight away. Harry scribbled down the dates on the back of Sirius' letter, tied it to the brown owl's leg, and watched it take flight again. What had he expected? He asked himself. Advice on how to survive underwater? He had been so intent on telling Sirius about Snape and Moody that he'd forgot to mention the clue that the egg held. What does he want to know about the next Hogsmeade weekend for anyway, said Ron. Dunno, said Harry dully. Momentary happiness that had flared in sight of him died. Come on, it's time for care of magical creatures. Whether Hagrid was trying to make up for the blast-ended Scroots, or because there were now only 2 Scroots left, giant as though they may be, or because he was trying to prove he could do anything Professor Grubblyplank could, Harry didn't know. But Hagrid had been continuing her lesson on unicorns ever since he'd returned to work. It was clear, over the course of the weeks, that Hagrid knew quite as much about unicorns as he did about monsters, though it was also clear that he found their beauty and lack of danger disappointing. Today he had managed to capture 2 unicorn foals. Unlike full-grown unicorns, they were pure gold. Parvati and Lavender were transported into delight at the sight of them, and even Pansy Parkinson had to work hard to conceal how much she liked them. Easier to spot than the adults, Hagrid told the class. They turn silver when they're about 2 years old, and they grow horns at about 4. They don't go white until they're full grown, about 7 or so. They're a bit more trusted when they're babies, don't mind men so much. Come on, move in a bit. You can pat them if you want. Just give them a few sugar lumps. You okay, Harry? Said Hagrid, moving around slightly while most of the others swarmed around the baby unicorns. Yeah, said Harry. Bit nervous, said Hagrid. A bit, said Harry. Harry, said Hagrid, clapping a massive hand on his shoulder so that his knees buckled under the weight. I'd been worried before I saw you take on the Horntail, but now I know you can do anything you set your mind to. I'm not worried at all. You're going to be fine. You've got your clue worked out, haven't you? Harry nodded, but even as he did so, an insane urge that he didn't have any idea how to survive at the bottom of a lake came to him. He looked at Hagrid. Perhaps he had to go into the lake sometimes to deal with creatures in it. He looked over everything else on the grounds, after all. You're gonna win, Hagrid growled, patting Harry's shoulder again. Harry felt himself actually sink an inch or 2 into the soft ground. I know it. I can feel it. You're gonna win, Harry. Harry just couldn't bring himself to wipe the happy smile off Hagrid's face. Pretending he was interested in the young unicorns, he forced a smile in return, and moved forward to pat them with the others. By the evening before the second task, Harry felt as though he were trapped in a living nightmare. He was fully aware that even if by some miracle he managed to find a suitable spell, he'd have a real job mastering it overnight. How could he have let this happen? Why hadn't he got to work on the egg's clue sooner? Why had he ever let his mind wander in class? What if a teacher had once mentioned how to breathe underwater? He sat with Hermione and Ron in the library as the sun set outside, tearing feverishly through page after page of spells hidden from one another by massive piles of books. Harry's heart gave a huge leap every time he saw the word water on the page. But almost every time it was just, take 2 pints of water, half a pound of something else, and in it. I don't reckon it can be done, said Ron's voice flatly from the other side of the table. Nothing. The closest was the thing dry up puddles and ponds, that drop charm, but drain a lake? Never. There must be something, Hermione muttered, moving a candle closer. Her eyes were so tired that she was poring over the tiny print of old and forgotten bewitchments and charms, with her nose about an inch from the book's page. They'd never have given us a task that couldn't be done. They have, said Ron. Harry, just go down to the lake tomorrow, stick your head in, yell at the mer people to give back whatever they've nicked, and see if they chuck it out. Best you can do, mate. There's a way of doing it, said Hermione crossly. There just has to be. She seemed to be taking the library's lack of useful information on the subject as a personal insult. It had never failed her before. I know what I should have done, said Harry, resting face down on saucy tricks for tricky sorts. I should have learned how to be an animagus like Sirius. An animagus was a wizard who could transform into an animal. Yeah, you could have turned into a goldfish whenever you wanted, said Ron. Or a frog, yawned Harry. He was exhausted. It takes years to be an animagus, and then you have to register yourself. And do you remember Professor McGonagall telling us, Hermione vaguely? Then you got to go down to the improper use of magic office. Then you got to tell him about your... Hermione, I was joking, said Harry wearily. I know I haven't got a chance of turning into a frog by tomorrow morning. Oh, this is no use, Hermione said, snapping shut weird wizarding dilemmas. Who on earth wants to make their nose hair grow into ringlets? I wouldn't mind, said Fred Weasley's voice. Be a talking point, wouldn't it? Harry, Ron, and Hermione looked up. Fred and George had just emerged from behind some bookshelves. What are you two doing here, said Ron. Looking for you, said George. McGonagall wants you, Ron. And you, Hermione. Why? Said Hermione, looking surprised. To know. She was looking a bit grim, though, said Fred. We're supposed to take you down to her office, said George. Ron and Hermione looked at Harry, who felt his stomach drop. Was McGonagall about to tell Ron and Hermione off? Perhaps she noticed how much they were helping him. Was he supposed to be doing all the research alone? We'll meet you back at the common room, Hermione told Harry as she went with Ron. Both of them looked very anxious. Bring as many of these books as you can, okay? Right, said Harry uneasily. By 8 o'clock, Madame Pince had established and extinguished all the lamps. Staggering under the weight of as many books as he could carry, Harry returned to the Gryffindor common room, pulled the table into a corner, and continued to search. Crookshanks climbed into his lap a couple hours in, and curled up, purring deeply. The common room emptied slowly around Harry. People kept wishing him luck for the next morning in cheery, confident voices like Hagrid's, all of them apparently convinced he was about to pull off another stunning performance like what he had managed in the first task. Harry couldn't answer them, just nodded, feeling like a golf ball was stuck in his throat. By 10 to midnight, he was alone in the room with Crookshanks. He'd searched all the remaining books, and Ron and Hermione had not come back. It's over, he told himself. You can't do it. You'll just have to go down in the lake in the morning and tell the judges. He imagined himself explaining he couldn't do the task. He pictured Bagman's look of round-eyed surprise, Karkaroff's satisfied smile. He could almost hear Fleur Delacour saying, I knew it. He's too young. He's but a little boy. He saw Malfoy flashing his Potter stinks badge at the front of the crowd and saw Hagrid's face drop. Forgetting Crookshanks was on his lap, Harry stood up very suddenly. Crookshanks hissed angrily as he landed on the floor, gave him a disgusted look, and walked away with his tail in the air. But Harry was already hurrying up to his dormitory. He'd grab the invisibility cloak and go back to the library. He'd stay there all night if he had to. Lumos, Harry whispered 15 minutes later as he opened the library door. Wand tip alight, he crept along the bookshelves, pulling down more books on anything at all. that might include a passing reference to underwater survival. He carried them over to a table, set to work, occasionally checking his watch. 1 in the morning, 2 in the morning. The only way he kept going was telling himself over and over again, the secret's in the next book. The secret's in the next book. The secret's in the next. And that is how we leave Harry tonight, asleep in the library. Tomorrow we shall find out what happens upon his waking. Good night.